Isn't accounted for. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Today is November 18th. I'm calling the meeting to order pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 on March 29th, 2023. Governor Maura Healey signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 2023 to provide for supplementing certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects. This act includes an extension until March 31st, 2025. Yes, Chris, I have it on my calendar. Of the remote meeting provisions. The August 19th, 2024 Select Board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. The chair should grant permission to Westwood Media Center, I assume that's Jack, to record the meeting and to anyone else who wishes to record this meeting. And our first order of business is the chair's update. Board and committee vacancies. We have a number of vacancies. If folks are interested, we have openings on the Cemetery Committee, Commission on Disability, Bike Path, Pedestrian Bike Safety Committee, Cultural Commission, Housing Partnership, Rec Commission. Please see the town's website if you're interested. And if you're interested, let me suggest the following. Why don't you just look at the town's website, see when they're meeting, check that out, see if you like it, see if it's a good fit. And if you are interested and you like the folks you meet, call the Select Board's office at 781-326-4172. And our rock star Tish Healy would be happy to walk you through the process. Islington Center Redevelopment Traffic Signal Timing Study. Meeting update. Unfortunately, this item will be discussed, if you're here for that, will be discussed at our December 9th meeting. Some unforeseen matters prevented people from attending. We thought it'd be best to have all of the experts at the meeting. Overnight parking restrictions, December 1st to March 31st. Please help our very dedicated DPW workers who do a terrific job clearing out the snow off our roads. The town does impose a restriction prohibiting overnight parking from December 1 to March 31st. You can also help by removing any basketball hoops, hockey nets, soccer nets, and any other obstacles by removing them from the roads and away from the areas where the trucks push the snow up onto the side of the road. And you can also help by clearing any snow from nearby fire hydrants. New hires. The fire department recently hired Scott Pambusco as a firefighter paramedic. We'll be having an official event swearing in Scott after the holidays. The fire chief tells me we are very close to onboarding a second firefighter, so we'll make it a combined ceremony. Please welcome Scott if you see him around town. And congrats to Chief Lund for filling in these positions. I have a fun announcement here. Toys for Tots. The Westwood Public Safety Communications Center has partnered with the Westwood Fire Department and the Westwood Police Department to collect toys for this very special drive sponsored by the United States Marines. New and unwrapped toys can be dropped off at either the fire station or the police station. If you don't know, we have a severe fire weather condition that still persists, and our Fire Chief Lund has extended outdoor restrictions through November 22nd. We have drought conditions combined with significant amounts of dry leaves and brush on the ground. And I know this, high winds. Therefore, please, no outdoor fires, no fire pits or campfires. My last thing is, under the chair's update, is I'd like to give a shout out to some of the paramedics out of the Islington Fire Station that recently responded to a cardiac arrest call in Islington. Firefighters Jones, Menard, Narciso, Brown, Royer, along with Deputy Chief Mahan and Lieutenant Gordon. I believe it was last Thursday or Friday last week that they received a call for someone in their late 20s in cardiac arrest at one of the shops on Washington Street opposite Wentworth Hall. A bystander immediately told, and I'm told she was, I believe it was she was an RN, started CPR immediately. In less than 2 minutes, the team from the Islington station, after receiving the call, were on the scene with the firefighter paramedics. They took over CPR, hooked up an AED. They had a shockable rhythm and they provided a shock, which resulted in return of spontaneous circulation. They brought the patient to BID Needham, and after a few hours, the patient was med-flighted into Boston, awake, alert, and talking, which is pretty spectacular. That's a great save. The medics restored the cardiovascular system quickly, and because of the bystander CPR and the speed of the medics getting to this call, they're able to prevent any neurological damage, which is a huge concern to us in the hospital. Being a heart saver community, this is outstanding work by all involved. And Chris, maybe we want to reach out to this RN and give her some recognition. We can talk about it tomorrow morning. Let's promote the Westwood Heart Saver community. It also speaks to the fact that having 2 fire stations with short run times to most parts of the time does pay off. Seconds do count. And the fact that we're there in under 2 minutes is spectacular. This could also have been a shout out to the police officers as well, because I'm sure, Rob, Marianne, you remember, not too long ago, we approved a grant that Chief Silver got to put AEDs and it's a pretty slick AED that he put into the cruisers. So all of our frontline cruisers and the officers have been trained in use of those. So we have really, the EMS service has done a great job in this town. And this is a great save. I'm very, very impressed with everyone involved. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chris Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of updates. One is called Wreaths Across America. This is a great program, and I'm pleased to share with the community that this is being sponsored by Westwood Youth Hockey. Also partnering with Westwood Youth Hockey is our own Michelle Miller, who, in addition to procurement, she's also the town's care of graves. So she's working with Westwood Youth Hockey to assist in coordinating the wreaths in the Westwood cemeteries. Michelle's outreach should certainly be acknowledged and appreciated. This is an event that happens on December 14th. So, and just a little background, Wreaths Across America is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach the next generation the value of freedom. They execute this mission in several ways, but the most public way is to decorate veteran graves with a wreath in December. Wreaths Across America places wreaths at the graves at the Arlington National Cemetery and across the country. In 2008, the U.S. Congress voted the second Saturday in December as Wreaths Across America Day. This year, that falls on December 14th. Each participating organization will host a ceremony and reinforce, remember, honor, teach the mission. After the ceremony, wreaths will be placed at each veteran's grave. Wreaths are picked up later in the season by the sponsoring organization. Westwood Youth Hockey has stepped up to sponsor this program in Westwood. When an organization agrees to run a program, they agree to fund the cost of the wreaths, which can be significant. Westwood Youth Hockey has raised significant funds to decorate almost 900 veterans' graves. It's a big project that they should be very excited about, and so should the community. They will have Westwood Youth families who will be volunteering, and anyone else who would like to participate is welcome to join. This is also being assisted with members from our DPW, our cemetery team at the DPW, for also assisting with the logistics and the planning. So I want to thank Westwood Youth Hockey, Michelle Miller, and our DPW, and the select board is certainly invited to attend that event on December, and so is the community, the event on December 14th. The next update that I have is regarding our housing production plan. If you go onto the town's website underneath the calendar, there's a link to this event, this production plan with a QR code. But what we're doing is we're looking for resident surveys, which will close on November 27th. Developer and property management surveys will also close on November 27th. And then there's a community visioning session that is scheduled now for December 12th. So it's certainly the housing production team is looking for as many completed surveys as possible. So again, November 27th for resident survey, as well as developer and property management survey. And the community visiting session is scheduled for December 12th. And Mr. Chair, just want to add on to what you said regarding the Toys for Tots. That's a great program that our Public Safety Communication Center, partnering with the fire department and the police department, do to collect toys for Toys for Tots. So it's certainly a great program. And those are my updates, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chris. And they're already getting some pretty good responses from the community for the toys. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah, Westwood has been a community that has continued to support Toys for Tots well before I got here. So we certainly thank everyone in the community for their contribution.
Yeah, great work. Chris, do you have a time on the wreaths for in the cemetery?
Yes, I can. Let me just pull that up.
You might have said it. I'm sorry, I missed it.
I will, Chair, I will find that and I'll get that information to you.
Cool, thank you. All right. Scheduled action. Before I go to that, Rob, Marion, is there anything you guys want to say to what's been put on the plate?
Nothing to add here. Thanks,
Okay.
Joe.
All right.
Just nothing to add here other than express the same thanks that you did earlier to our public safety professionals.
Excellent, thank you. Scheduled action. So we have, let me get on the right page here. FY25 tax classification public hearing. We have Stephanie McManus, our finance director, along with Cheryl Hanley, our town assessor. Is Chris McEwen here? I didn't see him.
I see a few who maybe Chris would just raise his hand and then I will let him in. Not sure which is his sign on.
He's a stealthy guy. And how
I'm
about,
happy to bring the motion, Joe, to open the hearing.
thank you, Mary Ann.
Sure.
And I will
hereby-
second the motion.
Discussion on the motion. Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion carries. And
Okay. They're all, oh, I see Chris. Hold on, just wait a minute. And Nancy Hyde is here and also Mark Murphy.
great.
Here comes Chris McEwen.
Hello, Chris. Glad you could make it.
Here comes Nancy right now.
Chris, you're on mute.
I just unmuted. Thank you, Rob. I just unmuted. Good evening, everybody. I'm in the dark in my car outside a Hale board meeting that starts at 6:30, so I'm multitasking. I apologize for that. I probably should have left the camera off. Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that in the banter before the meeting started, you mentioned going through first and to sixth grade for 7 years at your elementary school. I'd like to hear that story at a later date.
I was going to let that one go, Chris.
Hey, Rob,
It's not my nature.
it is what it is, man. There's no getting away from it. But I'm sorry, Nance. I'll recognize Nance, but Nance, I think you'll agree with me. I think Chris has gone back to his Submariner days in the dark there for this meeting.
Yes, he is a bit underground, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, Nancy, Chris, thank you again for coming on board, and Mark.
And Mark, yeah. We
Stephanie.
have to call our meeting to order.
Okay, go ahead.
Chris, I'll leave that to you.
I don't have any materials to read in front of me, but I will gavel our meeting to order. We don't need to take a roll call for that, I don't believe, do we? On
Yes,
Zoom? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
you just need a
if
second,
I-
Chris.
Is Mark on with us also?
Yes, I'm on as well.
Okay.
Mark, would you like to second that?
Yes, I would second the motion.
You're on, Chris.
Okay. Okay, so Ms. Hyde,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
and Mr. McHugh and I vote aye as well. The meeting is gaveled to order.
Thank you, Chris. Stephanie, you're on. And Cheryl.
Hi, I will start off just by introducing our new town assessor, Cheryl Hanley. She started, has it been 3 months yet, Cheryl? Maybe not even?
2 months ago today, I started on September 18th. So for those of you I haven't met, I did replace John Curran. My name is Cheryl Hanley. Very happy to be here.
So she's really baptism by fire on this one. She jumped right in. She's been doing a great job. So she's actually going to lead the presentation tonight on the tax classification hearing. So I'll turn it over to her, and I'll be here if anyone has any questions specifically for me. So go ahead, Cheryl.
Thank you, Stephanie. And before I ask to share my presentation, I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone in town for the warm welcome I've received. And I'd also like to express my gratitude for the Board of Assessors for their work and their guidance during my transition to this role. May I share my screen? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Tonight, I will cover the purpose of the annual classification hearing, report assessed values and how they've changed since last year. We'll also examine the tax levy, a split tax rate versus a single tax rate, and how the options would affect the average single-family tax bill and other properties. Finally, I will present the Board of Assessors' recommendation on the decision the Select Board will make tonight. Before the tax rate can be set, the Select Board must hold, I have to minimize this so I can see. Before the tax rate can be set, the Select Board must hold a public hearing each year to consider the tax rate options available to the municipality under property tax classification. The hearing is held after the assessors have determined final values and classified all properties, reporting this information to the Department of Revenue. The classification hearing does not determine the budget or how much money can be raised. It only determines the distribution of the tax levy among the property class types, also known as the tax shift. This is an assessment classification detail report, also known as an LA4. It shows the total number of parcels and the value for each class of property. Westwood's total taxable value for fiscal 25 is just over $7 billion, and the average single-family home value is $1,204,037. This is an increase of just over $38,000 from last year's average single-family value of $1,165,834. In the prior fiscal year, fiscal 2025, there was an increase of almost $238,000. This year's reduced increase indicates some leveling off of the dramatic value increases we've been experiencing in recent years. The values for fiscal 25 are determined on the full and fair cash value as of January 1st, 2024, which means that we analyzed calendar 2023 sales. Why do we change assessed values? Well, we are required to. Under the guidelines of the Department of Revenue and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, we are required to assess property at full and fair cash valuation. Assessed values must reflect the market or what properties are selling for. How did our values change in fiscal 25? Residential single family and condominiums increased by 3.3%, 2 and 3 family by 3.7%, apartments 7.5%, and commercial industrial properties a modest 1.3%. It's important to note that these values represent averages, and some properties may see a larger or smaller change. This slide details commercial and residential values as a percentage of the total value in town. Under assessed values and the corresponding pie chart, you see that our residential values equal 87.18% of the total value in town, which is up slightly from last year when it was 87.07%. The graph on the left-hand side shows the commercial values as a percentage of the total value all the way back to 1991. Commercial values once held as much as 20% of the total value in Westwood. And now we're looking at the current fiscal 2025 commercial values are at 12.82% of the total value in town. The levy represents the total amount of money that Westwood needs to raise through property taxes. For fiscal 25, the levy to be raised is $100,121,042. To calculate a single tax rate, you would take the levy and divide that by the total value in town, and which in this case results in a rate of $14.30 per 1,000 of assessed value. We currently don't have a single tax rate in Westwood, but if we did, this is the algebraic formula we would use to calculate it. Municipalities must decide whether to tax all classes of property at their full and fair cash share of the levy, which results in a single tax rate, or to reduce the share of the levy paid by the residential property owners and shift a portion of those taxes to commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayers, which results in a split tax rate. The Commissioner of Revenue determines a minimum residential factor for each community. This factor is used to ensure the shift of the tax burden complies with the law. Chapter 200 of Mass General Laws, Chapter 58, Section 1A allows cities and towns to give residential property taxpayers greater relief by adopting a shift of up to 175%. The Board of Assessors recommends a shift factor of 1.70 for fiscal 2025. In making a recommendation of a shift percentage, the Board of Assessors must weigh the balance between offering meaningful relief to residential taxpayers, but also allowing for future flexibility should our residential base continue to outpace commercial values. This chart details Westwood's tax rate history since fiscal 2015. As you can see, the tax rate has primarily been 1.70. We saw a slight adjustment to 1.68 in fiscal 2019 when the commercial base ticked higher. In recent years, they went back to the 1.70 with a temporary increase to 1.72 last year, which mitigated some of the impact of skyrocketing residential values. Given that residential values are now stabilizing, the board believes it's appropriate to return to the 1.70 shift. If the select board opted for a single tax rate, the residential class of properties would pay 87.2% of the total levy. Simply put, that's because 87.2% of the tax base is residential. If the select board opts for the recommended shift, the commercial, industrial, and personal property class pays a higher percentage of the levy. So their base, they're only comprise 12.8% of the tax levy, but they would pay 21.8% with this recommended shift. This table illustrates how different shift percentages would affect the tax burden between residential and commercial properties. Under a shift of 1.70, the residential tax rate would be $12.83, and the commercial rate would be $24.31. This is a slight adjustment from fiscal 24, where the residential rate was $12.81 and the commercial rate was $24.68. I do want to note that tax rate stated below can change slightly during the DOR approval process. In fiscal 24, the average single family homeowner paid $14,934. If the single tax rate 1430 is selected, the bill will increase to $17,218. If the recommended shift is adopted, the bill will be $15,448. Therefore, that 1.70 shift results in a savings to the average single family taxpayer of $1,770. I know that this slide holds a lot of data, but the key takeaway is the power of the shift. This chart demonstrates the effect a shift tax rate has on both residential and commercial properties. Without a shift, residential taxes would rise sharply, while commercial taxes would fall drastically. By using the shift, we can reduce the impact on residential tax bills while maintaining a reasonable tax rate for commercial properties. Here's a look at the average single-family tax bills in surrounding communities based on fiscal 24 data. And the reason we're looking at historical data is because all of the towns are currently working on their fiscal 25 tax rates, so that the current data is not yet available. While it's difficult to compare tax bills directly, as each community has different service levels, budgets, and number of parcels, this gives you some context for where Westwood stands relative to its neighbors. In summary, the Board of Assessors recommends adopting a 1.70 shift for the fiscal 25 tax year. This recommendation strikes a balance between providing relief to residential taxpayers and ensuring that the commercial tax base remains competitive and sustainable for future years. Before the Select Board makes a motion, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Chair, can I jump in and ask a question?
Please.
Just looking at, first of all, Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you.
Secondly, excellent presentation and very clear. One of the things that noted in there is that proportionally speaking, it looked like residential went up 3.3 while commercial only went up 1.3. And last year we had a similar proportionality of 3-to-1, but the increases were substantially more. They were, I think, 24-8 or 21-7 or something along those lines, which is what resulted in a significant sort of shift in the pie. And this year it seems like, okay, even though proportionally residential went up much faster than commercial, seems like the pie is holding roughly steady in that just 12.5 to 13% range.
It was a much less dramatic change this year from the prior year. And I think that we are seeing more inventory hit the market as far as our residential properties. So of course we had that lack of inventory that was really driving up prices and people getting over asking. I think last year in this month is kind of a slow month. There were about 12 properties active on the market. I looked at this morning, there are 19 active properties. So more inventory is sort of good for stabilizing values. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of commercial sales as such. And it would be hard to justify a big increase in that sector given high commercial interest rates and just the commercial market. So unfortunately, for the time being, there is more growth in the residential sector, but at least we have a little less drama than you experienced last year.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Mary Ann.
Yes, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Cheryl. Thank you to all of our assessors for all of your work. So you explained the need for the board to assess values every year under state law and what that change has been. Can you just describe generally for residents how their properties are assessed?
Sure. So the big takeaway is every fiscal year has an assessment date of January 1st. So, and we are a little bit behind real-time conditions. For fiscal 25, we're looking at an assessment date of January 1st, 2024, which means we're analyzing calendar year 2023 sales. And we have to be within a certain range when we look at our assessment to sales ratios. So if we're too far behind or too far ahead, we have to make table adjustments to make sure we're within the requirements of the Department of Revenue, and that happens every single year. Of course, another thing is if people pull a building permit, we can capture any improvement through June 30th. And that's only if they pull a building permit, and whatever growth can be captured or whatever improvement can be captured through June 30th, 2024. So that's an added complication, but does that answer your question?
I think so. I actually, I think just more generally, if someone is wondering, how it is that you come up with a value for my house, what are the guidelines that you need to follow? How is that determined?
That's a great question. So every property, every parcel record card, there's two things that go into assessed values. It's the individual attributes on the property record card and the market conditions. So of course, we have hundreds of factors within the property record card that are all used in our CAMA system, a computer-assisted mass appraisal system that will have a value associated with it. So what type of house? Is it a colonial, a split level, a ranch? What the square footage is, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the grade is, meaning the quality of materials used at the time of construction, what the current condition of the property is, what's the age of the property, because there'll be a depreciation. So there's so many different factors that are unique to each parcel, but then everybody is subject to the market conditions. And it all comes together. Does that help?
And all those criteria you just talked about, are they required by the state?
Yes, absolutely. And we're tasked
Can you
with.
hear? Okay.
Yeah, there's a little drag, but yes, we are tasked with keeping accurate records to the best of our ability. Of course, if anyone has any questions about the attributable characteristics on their property record card, I would encourage them to contact our office.
Terrific. Thank you. And I just wanted to point out that this hearing is consistent with our financial policies, which require the select board to look at the tax shift factor every year. And I'm certainly in favor of the shift factor that you have recommended as a means of mitigating the tax burden on our residents. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cheryl, could you help me out? I spoke to many residents in Westwood. They were concerned about their assessments and the tax bill. But as I scanned some of the local newspapers, is it my interpretation correct that we weren't the only ones that faced the situation in this area with the change in assessments and change in tax bills?
You're correct. Everybody, it's been a national problem. It's certainly been a regional problem. And this general area within the last several years has seen an exploding increase in property values. Of course, increasing of values doesn't, the tax rate goes where it's going to go. Okay, it goes where it needs to go. So you have your budget, which is determined at town meeting, and then you have your values, and you have to back into what your tax rate is based on the budget and the total values in town. So the reason taxes go up aren't because of what the assessed values. They're not necessarily correlated, and I do think that that's sometimes confusing for folks. We have to follow the market just to figure out the share allocation of the levy. But as property values increase, it doesn't mean that the tax levy increases. That's a measure of the budget, what services are being provided to the town, what debt exclusions there are, and if I'm making sense. So they're kind of two separate things that come together. You have your budget, and then you have your assessed values, and you come up with your formula. And so if values didn't increase, the tax rate would have been higher to come up with the same amount of money at the end of the day for the levy.
Yeah, we were sort of victim of a perfect storm in the prior year, in that the 2022 values had soared, and it was the first year of paying for the Pine Hill. So that was
Yeah.
sort of the double whammy that folks felt the burden of.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks, Rob. Cheryl, I've heard nothing but good things from folks at Town Hall since you arrived, so strong work and welcome.
Thank you.
Nancy, good, your hands is up. Nancy,
Yeah, I just wanted to speak similarly, Joe. It's not only difficult to come into a different town and take on everything, but to do so at the timing that Cheryl did, when we have all this technical work that has to take place and it has to be done on a particular schedule. And maybe Stephanie can speak to it a little bit more, but I think it was done with such accuracy that the report back from the DOR right away, and I don't have the right terminology, but was a quick turnaround of everything is in proper order. So it allowed Cheryl to bring the work to us as a board to have a clear discussion about the tax shift. And I think Cheryl was spot on with everything that she has said about why we think 1.7 makes sense. But I wanted to acknowledge that she not only came in and did a good job, she came in and did an excellent job. So we appreciate it, Cheryl. We're glad you're with us.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Nancy.
thanks, Nancy.
It's
We
maybe
ready
the
for
earliest
motion?
that we've done this in my time on the select board.
I think you're right, Rob. I think you're right, which is what Nancy was alluding to. So excellent work. We need a motion for this, correct?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think we
If I
should
may-
allow for public comment first.
Oh, okay.
And I believe Mr. Murphy has his hand up as well, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo Nancy Hyde's comments and very appreciative of all the work that Cheryl has done. I think we got very lucky as a community to be able to hire Cheryl. And she had a lot of great experience, and very appreciative of all the hard work she's done. So just wanted to thank her and acknowledge her publicly.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Rob, am I missing any hands? I didn't see his.
I think you're good.
All right. Public comment, Tish, is there anything in there?
No comments right now. If you want to give it a minute or so.
Okay. I always heed your advice.
Imagine Stephanie having this done this early also makes it a little bit less stressful in terms of getting, everything prepped to get tax bills out, right?
Yes, that's hugely important. It's true. The last 2 years, I think it was in December. So this is great. It helps.
I think we're
No
ready.
comments, Joe.
I'm
Mary Ann.
happy to make a motion. I move that the select board vote to approve and adopt a classification factor of 1.7 for the fiscal year 2025 as recommended by the Board of Assessors, and to authorize the town administrator's office to electronically sign on their behalf the notification of their vote to be filed with the Department of Revenue.
And I second that motion.
Roll call. Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you very much,
Thank you, everyone, and I will also
all of you.
Thank
move
you.
Great
to
work, Cheryl.
close.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr.
Hearing.
Chairman, point of order. I think you need to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I heard Mary Ann's gentle hint.
I think Chris McEwen does have his hand raised. I'm not
Ye-
sure.
Yes,
okay.
yes, I was just asking if we need to formally adjourn
Should-
the assessors meeting
You should, Mr. Chairman.
before the hearing's closed, Pat?
It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. I mean,
Okay,
the hearing is essentially done. We voted on it. So
Okay.
you can close your meeting now, and then the select board can close the public hearing.
okay. I will quickly echo my colleagues' comments about Cheryl's work, but I also want to acknowledge Stephanie's work in finding Cheryl to begin with. The town, I think, is very lucky with both of them, but
And Molly,
and
you
Molly.
did a good job.
But I would ask for a motion to adjourn the Board of Assessors meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Mark?
Second.
okay, in favor, Mark,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
and I'm in favor as well. The Board of Assessors meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
All
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And reiterating the thanks to Molly, Stephanie, especially Cheryl, and all of the members of the Board of Assessors. I hereby move to close our public hearing on the tax shift factor.
And I will second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Which brings us to a public hearing for RBSBW Incorporated, doing business as Roche Brothers Supermarkets at 338 Washington Street. Change of ownership interest, issuance / transfer of stock / new stockholder, and change of corporate structure application. I have a motion to open this hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. With us tonight, we have Nora Loughnane, Director of Community Economic Development, with attorney, I believe, Andrew Upton. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Right. Nora, would you like to lead off on this?
Sure. So to start with, you have two hearings. So we'll go through the first one and then go on to the second. But just to explain exactly what's going on, it's a lot of the discussion is really for both of them. So I don't know if it's easier to open them both at once or hold them separate. I don't know,
Let's
Pat, do
stop
you
there
want to
for a
weigh
second.
in on that? If any of the discussion in the first hearing pertains to the second, do you want them open simultaneously, or we'll just repeat
I
ourselves?
think it's cleaner to do one after the other, so the
Okay.
record is clean. That's would be
That's
my
fine.
preference, but we could do it either way.
Yeah, we can do one at a time and we'll just repeat ourselves to make sure everything's on the record for both hearings. So the purpose of the two hearings, and specifically the first one, is for a change in ownership, stock changes, and corporate structure changes to RBSBW Inc., which does business as Roche Brothers Supermarkets. It's important to note that there's no planned change in the services, the operations, or the management of Roche Brothers. It's just these corporate changes. So because of the multiple tiers of ownership of this business, the applicant consulted first with the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, the ABCC, and was told that what they're proposing to do is fully within keeping of the provisions of MGL Chapter 138. But it had to be handled in two separate applications, locally and at the state level. So this first application, both applications, I should say, were advertised simultaneously in the Hometown Weekly and posted in the clerk's office. And both applications were considered by the Alcohol Review Committee, who voted unanimously to recommend approval of both. So the first application before you that your hearing is now open for is for RBSBW Inc., doing business as Roche Brothers Supermarkets, to have your approval of a change of ownership, interest, insurance transfer, new stockholder, and change of corporate structure. So those are all the changes that are being proposed. The local licensee remains the same, while the next tier up in ownership, Roche Brothers Supermarket, changes its name from Roche Brothers Supermarket Company to Roche Brothers Midco LLC. And it changes from a business trust to an LLC. Then in the next level of ownership, there's a new entity, Roche Brothers Holdco, that's being added as the parent company of Roche Brothers Midco LLC. So those are the two changes that are included in this first hearing. And the select board is being asked to approve the application for change of ownership interest, stock issuances and transfers, and changes in the corporate structure. And all of the changes, if approved by the select board, are to be approved pending Alcohol Beverages Control Commission approval.
Thank you, Nora. Andrew, did you want to say anything else in addition to that?
That was an excellent detailed review of my application, so I don't really need to say much, except that, first of all, Roche Brothers Counsel Alex Fury is with us if there's any questions that I can't answer. But basically, the first one is to get the company corporately restructured so we can do action number 2, which is the Roche brothers themselves selling off some shares for estate planning purposes. So number 1, the corporate shift. Number 2 will be the transfer. But with that, we're glad to answer any more questions as well.
Thank you, sir. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Attorney Upton. I heard Nora say that nothing will change as far as retail service, but I just want to ask the question, what, if anything, will change in Westwood as a result of this corporate change?
There are no plans to change any aspect of the operation. This is happening at 9 Roche Brothers across the state that have liquor licenses and another dozen or so that do not. So it's an infusion of capital. It's an estate planning device, but Roche Brothers will remain the same.
Thank you very much.
Rob, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. I don't have any questions either, but I do want to go on the record that I think Roche Brothers has been an excellent neighbor in Westwood, and we've certainly enjoyed having Roche Brothers here, and they've been very, very supportive, especially to some of our sports groups. So thank you to your folks for helping out with that. Tish, anything from the audience on this?
No questions right now.
All right. And anybody like to make a motion?
I will be happy to make a motion that the select board approve the application for change of ownership interest, stock issuances, stock transfers, and the change of corporate structure for RBSBW Inc., DBA Roche Brothers Supermarkets, 338 Washington Street, pending Alcohol Beverages Control Commission approval, and to add the electronic signatures of the select board to the Alcohol Beverages Control Commission Licensing Authority certification form.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Rob. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well.
And I will hereby move to close this public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
Mary Ann?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Hearing is closed.
I'm happy to bring a motion to open the second hearing, Mr. Chair, if you like.
Thank you so much.
I hereby move that we open the public hearing on the RBSBW Inc. DBA Roche Brothers Supermarkets, 338 Washington Street, change of ownership, interest issuance / transfer of stock / new stockholder application, action number 2.
And I'll second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Nora?
All right, so this second hearing is to affect changes in ownership at level 4. So RBSBW Inc., doing business as Roche Brothers Supermarkets, has requested this hearing for the change in ownership at this level. Again, there will be no changes to the local services, the operations, or the management of the Roche Brothers store in Westwood. The purpose is the change in ownership, interest in stock for RBSBW Inc., doing business as Roche Brothers Supermarket, to create a change of beneficial interest. 48% of the ownership interest will be transferred to Michael A. Bazzuto, and 3% ownership will be transferred to the Bazzuto Employees Profit Sharing and Stock Ownership Trust. The Roche Brothers Family LLC and trusts have agreed to sell all of their shares, so Michael A. Bazzuto and the Bazzuto Employees Profit Sharing and Stock Ownership Trust will now have 51% ownership of the business. So this, as well as the subject of the first hearing, was reviewed by the Alcohol Review Committee, and the committee recommended unanimously that the Select Board grant approval for this ownership interest and stock issuance change at pending Alcohol Beverage Control Commission approval of the same.
Thank you, Nora. Any questions?
No question.
None for me either. Yep.
Tish, anything in the queue?
No, there's nothing in the queue right now.
All right, Mary Ann, would you like to make a motion?
I would. I move that we approve the change of ownership interest, stock issuances, and stock transfers application for RBSBW Inc., DBA Roche Brothers Supermarkets, 338 Washington Street, pending Alcohol Beverages Control Commission approval, and that the electronic signatures of the Select Board to the Alcohol Beverages Control Commission Licensing Authority certification form be affixed thereto.
Second.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Would
Thank
like
you
to
so
close
much.
the hearing?
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, everyone.
Miriam, you want to close the hearing?
I hereby move that we close this public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Hearing is closed. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you to Alexander.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for joining
much.
us.
Thank you all.
This brings us up to Fire Station 1 update. Molly Fitzpatrick, Deputy Town Administrator, HR Director Extraordinaire.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen really quick. I have 5 very, very quick slides to share. So we just want to give a brief overview of where we are in the project. We've been in the throes of the permitting stage over the last few months. Starting with the planning board, we've attended 3 meetings of the planning board, October 15th, October 29th, and November 7th, where I'm delighted to say that the planning board unanimously approved the environmental impact and design review. Following that, we were with the Zoning Board of Appeals last week, where the ZBA granted the necessary variances for the project, and the Conservation Commission held the first public hearing for the temporary operations at 90 Deerfield, otherwise known as the American Legion site, early in November, and their public hearing for the main fire station at 637 High Street will be mid-December, on December 11th. Just sharing what was shared with the planning board. This is the final silhouette of the building. This is the latest of the plan that we, as the design group, have been working on. The site plan hasn't changed much. It's obviously, as you can see, quite a bit bigger than the fire station that is outlined in yellow. The red is the proposed building, the yellow is the outlined, and around the this is the north side of the building, the generator and the dumpster, the parking lot on the west and the southern side, and then the apparatus continuing to exit out onto High Street. And then just what's coming up next for the group, the FS1 working group will be presenting to the Finance and Warrant Commission at their meeting on December 4th, 7 p.m. at the Westwood Public Library. There will be a community forum talking about the design and development and permitting updates. So sort of talking about what we've been talking about over the last month and a half or so with Planning Board and Conservation and ZBA. That'll be on December 5th at 6 p.m. at the Westwood Public Library. And then, as I had mentioned, the Conservation Commission has their public hearing on 637 High Street, the FS1 permanent location, at 7 p.m. on December 11th, and that will be held at Carby Street. I also I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Stop sharing. That the project went back out to cost estimators in late October, came back, and it is holding at the $40 million price tag total package involved. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have. That's the update.
Given the investment of hours in all of those aforementioned meetings, I don't know that I have any questions.
Same here. Thank you, Molly.
I agree. I couldn't have said it better, Rob. I don't have any questions either. Nice presentation, short and sweet. Thanks, Molly. And I don't see anything from the public, Tish, before we move on.
No questions right now.
Okay. That brings us to new business, traffic signalization, High Street, Route 109. And I believe Todd is going to present this. Is that correct? Todd, or
Yep, Joe, I'm here. I'm not sure if everybody can see me or not. It's not showing up my video on my phone right now, but I am
Okay.
here.
Okay.
We just figured it was a good idea just to have some discussion just regarding the signalization along Route 109. I know it's been brought to light with the recent discussions with the fire station, and just some questions and maybe just a little level of familiarity with the program itself out there. And there's been a lot of inquiries about what can be done with the system, what can't be done, how to make traffic flow a lot smoother on 109, while at the same time allowing for neighborhoods such as Windsor or Barlow or Westwood Glen flow as freely as they possibly could as well. Just a quick little bit of history with respect to the current signalization that's out there right now. We applied for the Mass Bottleneck Program a couple of years ago. It's a grant opportunity that the state had offered. And we applied for the adaptive signalization technology to be implemented along the corridor of Route 109. That's technology that essentially allows signals to communicate with each other at a very high level, basically reading the current and existing traffic flows, what they're doing at a particular time, and being able to optimize and basically make the traffic flow as efficient as possible. The signals that were upgraded range from Hartford Street to Gay Street to Windsor, Westwood Glen, and Summer Street. So there was a total of 5 signals that were upgraded. They all communicate with each other. It was a long process, but it was essentially an opportunity for us to have a significant upgrade to the corridor and basically allow for those signals to communicate at a very high level. It involved about $500,000 worth of equipment, again, all funded by the state. I have on the call tonight Mike Wozlewski from Ocean State Signal. Mike was an intricate piece of the puzzle with respect to incorporating this technology along the corridor. And it's also important to recognize that we as a department, we as the town, we understand the desires for everybody, whether you're flowing on Route 109 or trying to flow on Route 109, be it eastbound for the AM commute and westbound for the PM commute. But there's also concerns that we have with the abutting neighbors in neighborhoods that they too have to get out of their neighborhood and access Route 109. So it is that fine balance of what can we optimize for a signalization route along the corridor, while at the same time still allowing for neighborhoods such as Windsor, Barlow, Westwood, Glen to be able to get out of their neighborhood and actually get onto Route 109. So that said, I have Mike Wazlewski again from Ocean State Signal. He's been terrific. He's our go-to as far as any adjustments that have already been made. I know it's been mentioned previously that we adjusted specifically the Windsor neighborhood. We upped that an additional 5 seconds of exit time. It was originally 15 seconds. It's now 20 seconds. But Mike is the key piece of the puzzle as far as, you know, our go-to with respect to adjusting any of the signals. And he can better explain the technology along with really why we can and can't to certain intersections. So Mike, it's a little bit of a segue to yourself. If you don't mind jumping in.
Todd, if I could, Mr. Chair, ask a quick question, and it may be a helpful segue to Mike. Do we have any sense of any objective data that indicates better flow, higher volume of traffic? Because obviously, when we put technology like this in, you know, yes, you're expecting a return for that investment, but the thing is that you can't control are additional development, not just in Westwood, but also in Medfield, Millis, Medway, along the 109 corridor. So I'm just curious as to, do we have any objective data that says, you know, what the total volume is that flows through, and what the delay time or anything like that might be? Because I mean, obviously, we all have, you know, subjectively experience it during that morning commute. I'm just curious as to what type of objective data we might have to talk about the effectiveness of this platform.
Mike, before you answer that, I'll let you think it over a little bit. I just want to say something first. Rob always asks very long, intense questions, so I'll give you a little breathing room there. But Todd, I want to thank you on behalf of the select board. We knew this neighborhood was in a tough spot. We wanted to do something as quickly as possible to help the neighbors out. That's the fastest response, and I've grown up in this town that I've ever seen. So I want to thank you and your team for taking care of that block the box markings at Windsor Road and High Street. I went there 3 days myself to see how it was working. I was very impressed with the results. So Todd, that was great. Well done. And we really appreciate you being a team player. Thank you. Okay, Mike, now I'm sure you've got your answer all formulated.
Yeah. So we do have data. The new equipment that was installed at Hartford Street, at Gay Street, at Windsor Road, and Westwood Glen. The vehicle detection systems use a single point video camera to observe traffic, and if a vehicle is sitting, you know, at the stop line, then it'll place a call to the traffic signal controller to provide green time to that approach. That same system also collects traffic volume data 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, you know, we can pull that data from the system. I don't have that at my fingertips right now, but I can get that over to Todd, you know, sometime tomorrow. That does, you know, kind of show, and we can do it before we turn the system on, so that it's hard to compare because the system went on during the summer. So the volumes were probably pretty low during the summer anyways. But we can show what's going through there now on a typical weekday and also a typical weekend.
Then obviously you can't do a pre-post because the system wasn't installed for the pre, right? So
correct.
Right.
Correct. We actually can do a a pre and post. What we do is we take a 2-week period of time and we'll turn the system on one day, we'll turn it off the next day, turn it on the following day, and we'll go on and off for 2 weeks. And then we compare the data from the on days and the data from the off days. And so that gives you a good sense of, you know, sort of how the system is performing.
Yeah, I don't want to do any make work for anybody. You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, obviously if you've got the volume of traffic flowing through, even if, when did we turn this on, Mike?
It was, I believe, the middle to the end of July, I believe.
Okay, so, you know,
It
it's
could have
not,
been earlier, but
yeah, it's not even been 6 months yet. So, you know, I don't think we need any follow-up yet. I'd just be curious to know if, you know, we're seeing a volume build over time because of development, both in Westwood and other communities, as well as more efficient traffic handling. So.
Yeah. Rob, the one thing I will say, and Mike and I have had a discussion about this, I had spoken with Chris about this as well. You got to look at the signals. There's 5 total signal links that are communicating with one another. There's also voids in the system, be it we have the Dover Road exit points onto 109, and you also have Conant Road exit points onto 109. And what I mean by voids is obviously there's no signal there. So all of that cut through traffic that still remains is coming out of those 2 locations undetected through the system. So in other words, I guess one of the best case scenarios would be if there was a signal there, it would detect that flow of traffic coming out. But obviously there's no signal there, neither at nor is there one at Country Road as well. So that's creating, I guess you could look at it as like creating an under the radar, quote unquote, type of scenario for those vehicles. And that there's not a few of them.
Substantial, I can tell you.
Exactly.
Yep.
So as far as the overall efficiency of this level of technology, it's very capable of handling a lot. I mean, in fact, it's, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it's at the Seaport District in South Boston. I mean, this type of technology can handle basically everything, but what it can't account for are those voids or that quote unquote under the radar. And Rob, you nailed it. It's not a few vehicles. We're looking at numerous amounts of vehicles that still flow through there. And that coupled with Waze, that's another issue. You know, no matter what we do and how we try to balance the traffic, Waze is always going to find the quicker, faster. So that's an issue. But what's intriguing too, and it sounds silly to say, but it's the God's honest truth. And I watched it once we increased that second time leaving Windsor, and we've done it in other locations. What I've observed on several occasions is, say you increase it 5 seconds to leave a neighborhood. I don't know how many times I've been second or third behind a vehicle that the light turns green in 1, 2, 3 before a beep of a horn because people are on their phones or whatever they're doing. Now you've missed the 3 to 5 seconds that you've added there, and now everyone's in a rush to get out. And that happens more times than not. So it's a combination of a ton. The master of the obvious is, again, the development and all the traffic westbound heading eastbound in the morning and vice versa, PM commute. But it's also the little things too, and the big things such as Waze.
Todd, can we talk about, and Mike, thank you for being here, Mike. Can we talk about the Windsor Road light vis-a-vis the Gay Street light?
Yes, Mike, I had filled you in on that, if you don't mind commenting on the potential there.
Sure. Yeah, so you know, that the section of High Street between Windsor Road and Gay Street is very short, about 150 feet. That is, you know, about enough room to store 5 to 7 vehicles, depending on, you know, how big they are. And so I think one of the things that can happen, particularly in the afternoon, when you have a heavy westbound traffic flow, is that when the signal stops High Street traffic at Gay Street, that vehicle queue can extend back through Windsor Road. So when Windsor Road receives a green indication, the vehicles have nowhere to go because the intersection is being blocked. And so I understand that there's been some pavement markings that have been added along the corridor. It sounds like to discourage blocking the box, which is a good thing. I've also talked to Myovision, who is the developer of the adaptive system that is implemented along the High Street corridor, to see if there is a way that we can link Windsor Road and Gay Street a little bit more, especially in the afternoon, to have Windsor Road go yellow and then red first, and allow Gay Street to still be green heading westbound, and then go yellow and red at Gay Street, to keep that short link open and free, so that when people exiting Windsor Road, or even from the library, they have somewhere to go, and they can get into the traffic stream. And then when Gay Street turns green, now they can, start going with traffic. So that's something that we are looking into. The technology that we've deployed there between the controllers and the communication between the intersections provides us some tools. But I want to make sure that if we implement something at the local level, that the adaptive algorithm won't override that. And so I'm waiting to hear back from them. I wasn't able to get in contact with them before this meeting. But when I hear from them, I'll pass that information along to Todd and his team.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I would be interested in hearing more about that. Thank you for looking into that.
It's an intriguing thing because we have the technology out there, and like everything, if we tweak something, two things could happen. It could have a trickle effect in a negative way, along with the fact that it could negate the high level of technology that we've incorporated to try to better this whole situation. So it's more than twofold. It's three and fourfold. We're just trying to balance so many different things here, while also taking advantage of a tremendous opportunity with this technology that could and should, but we're trying to tweak things too. So it's interesting. It's something that's, I think, like Mike said it best, I think, to say the least, it's ever evolving, and only time will tell a little bit further into this, especially if there is potential there with the Gay Street signal to assist with the Windsor Road neighborhood.
Well, traffic is not static, right? I mean,
Right.
variables can change. With new businesses or construction, what have you. So that's a tough job you've got there, Mike. We appreciate you partnering with us, and
You're
Todd
welcome.
too.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rob, do you have any questions?
No further questions from me, Joe. Thank you.
Mary Ann, are you good?
I am. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Tish, do we have anything in the queue?
No questions right now.
All right, well, Todd, Mike, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That was very enlightening, and fingers crossed we'll make some headway on this as best we can.
Of course, we'll be sure to get whatever information flies in, whether it's tomorrow, this week, or next week. We'll get it immediately over to Chris and make sure everybody's in the loop.
Great, thanks, Todd. And
Thank you.
Thanks again for the quick work, Todd.
You're
Very
welcome. Thank you.
All right. New business, I think we're down to Stephanie, financial update, is that correct?
Hi, yes. I just have a short financial update for you tonight. I'll just share my screen if that works. Okay. I will start off just by going over our schedule of financial reviews. So this will just include sort of what we've done so far in this past couple of months, and then moving forward, what's upcoming in the financial cycle, specifically towards the budget. So at the previous select board meetings, if you recall, we did a year-end closeout for FY24. Went over key financial items, including free cash. It was certified, went over the certification of that, the current reserve balances in each of our reserve accounts. Also went over FY24 state aid, the final numbers that had come out, as well as the most recent meals and hotel tax revenues. So for tonight's select board meeting, thank you again for approving the tax shift. That's a huge step towards getting our tax recap certified. So the tax classification hearing is now done. We'll then submit the FY25 tax rate for approval by the Department of Revenue. And then actual FY25 tax bills will be mailed out for January 1st with final numbers. I kind of consider that the big kickoff. I'm a little bit early this year and giving you an update, sort of a preview into the FY26 budget. And a big part of that is that we're able to get new growth certified already, able to get the tax classification hearing set. We, of course, have to have everything finalized by the DOR. As you heard Cheryl say, a lot of these numbers are still preliminary because once we go through that sort of week or two long process with the DOR, just approving everything, some of that could change, but for the most part, I can start doing at least a projection for you. So upcoming, we'll have at your December meeting a preview of the FY26 capital budget. Then in January, a continued review of all revenue and expense projections for the next budget, review of capital budget requests, as well as the municipal operating budget, all in anticipation for that preparation of the FY26 proposed budget. The date we always have for that is February 1st. So what will be out by that February 1st date is just the overall budget book, the municipal budget book, and the capital budget book. So February and March meetings, those are the big ones. We'll have an update on adjustments due to outside assessments. We'll be going in front of the FinCom for their public hearings. And then the budget, the big date for budget presentation to the FinCom of the Select Board's recommended budget at that time is scheduled for February 11th.
Stephanie, before you move off this page, sorry.
Of course.
When you say update on budget adjustments due to outside assessments, given we've just spent a whole lot of time talking about residential assessed values, can you talk about what assessments there you are talking about?
No, that's a great point. I apologize. That term should be explained, correct? So we have certain assessments that are built into the budget. A lot of them are in what we call our fixed cost section that come from outside organizations that we do not set. A big example of that is our pension assessment. That's set by the Norfolk County Retirement Board, and we get assessed on what we owe each year to them as part of the pension payment. We also have MWRA. That's part of our sewer budget. It comes from the MWRA. They tell us each year sort of what we're being told is our assessment. So we have to build those numbers into the budget, but they come from outside sources. Is that sort of a good overview, Rob?
That was perfect. Thank you very much.
Great. It's going to be a big piece of the presentation tonight, so good segue. So just specific to the FY26 budget, the current status, we distributed what we call operating budget forms to our departments. That's sort of when we send out the spreadsheets and say, okay, start building your expense budget, what you're requesting, any new requests, any new positions, anything. They have about a month to build that and send it back to us. So we're going through that process right now. That also includes salaries. We'll start reviewing those as they come back from the department starting in December. And then we have distributed to the board, as well as the Finance and Warrant Commission and department heads, what we call our 5-year capital improvement plan. So that book has been distributed. That'll be the basis for conversations over the next couple of months as we build those capital budget articles for town meeting. I also have tonight a very preliminary forecast of projected revenues, and then I'm going to dive into our projection on fixed costs based on current information. You know, I can't go into too much detail on what our expenses might be for FY26 until we go through those department requests. But one thing I can sort of update you on so far is what I've heard on certain fixed cost numbers coming in. And then next steps, capital budget plan for articles. Like I said, the first time you'll start seeing that is in early December. The municipal and overall operating budgets, I will continue meeting. We meet with budget steering committee meetings. Those have been going good so far. We have another one next week. We'll work collaboratively with the municipal department heads to present a well-rounded budget. and then have our proposed expenditures and revenue budget, which must be balanced by that February 1st date. And then a proposed municipal budget, which is a review of services included in the proposed budget, and then highlighted changes to any salary and expenses. So you'll see that upcoming over the next couple of months, more heavily in January. So this is, don't look too closely at this because this is for the previous budget that we set in the current fiscal year, so FY25. I just wanted to set the stage as sort of a reminder to the board and then also to any residents watching of sort of what makes up our revenue budget. So for FY25, that total revenue budget is $123.4 million. As you can see the breakdown here amongst the 8 major categories of what funds those. And as you can see, obviously the largest percentage in that pie chart, the blue, we talk about this all the time, is our taxes. It's the majority of our revenue year over year is our tax base. And kicking off that, again, I don't usually show this early in the budget process, but I wanted to sort of give as much information as I possibly could, specifically since we are moving along well in our tax rate recap being certified by the DOR. So this is a preliminary look at the FY26 budget as we start to build it. And since taxes really are the largest piece of that revenue budget, I just wanted to start with the tax levy calculation. So this is all formula based. It's per Proposition 2.5, which you hear me talk about a lot. It's a formula based process for how we can set the tax levy year over year in order to raise what Cheryl was talking about earlier. So we always start off with the previous year's tax levy limit. That is the starting point for our calculation for the next budget. We can add 2.5% off of that, which is based on the Proposition 2.5% regulations. We then add at this point in the year estimated new growth. Now, Cheryl touched on it briefly, but we were able to already certify with the Department of Revenue our new growth for FY25. That number came in at $931,732. So as you can see down here, what we have called excess levy is the difference between our levy capacity for that fiscal year minus the actual levy assessed. So when we were drafting our budget for FY25 using the same process at that point in the year, we did not have the certified new growth number, so we were using an estimate at that time. Now that number is updated, you can see that that allows for excess levy. It's what we could have taxed residents, but did not. So it's a good thing. And then we are able to also capture that for the next year's starting point for building the tax levy. So we have this new number, 2.5%. Our estimated new growth for this time in the year gets us to our tax levy limit. We then add what's called exempt debt here in this blue highlighted column, which is a large piece of which is the Pine Hill Elementary School. So that is any debt that is raised outside of Proposition 2.5 through an override.
Before you leave this slide real quick.
Yep.
At a recent meeting, I heard somebody ask the question, why does the state force us to have to go up 2.5%? And that was sort of a misunderstanding of what Proposition 2.5 is. And so if I can just, Prop 2.5 allows us to raise the total tax levy, which is what pays for all the services of your police, your fire, your teachers, the DPW, et cetera, which are people-intensive businesses, allows us to raise that levy by 2.5% plus that new growth. And so it's that 2.5% that allows for the adjustments annually to those salaries for all of those people. And so I want to make sure that that's well understood, and it's, anything above that, what Prop 2.5 says is you've got to go to your legislature, your open town meeting to approve. So I just want to make sure that there's clarity around what Prop 2.5 is and is not.
Absolutely, Rob. And to just build on that as a last point, that I keep saying it's a formula-based calculation because it is. What it gets us to is what's called the levy capacity. So this $103 million number you see here, which is what we could tax. So we have not set our actual levy assessed yet because we haven't gone through our budget process. So this is just to get us into a calculation-based formula of what is possible to set the levy limit at. And like you said, this is sort of what funds our operating budget, as you'll see on a next slide. And this blue part is what's raised outside of that, which has to be voted at town meeting, and then also a special election for any exempt debt. So yes. I'm gonna move on, Rob. Just anything else? You
No,
good?
that was it. I was just wanted to make sure that that was, I don't think we can say that enough because, you know, there's a lot of people who weren't born that are taxpayers now when Prop 2.5 was put into play. So just want to make sure there's clarity around what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, great. So preliminary look at projections for available revenue in our upcoming budget cycle, which is FY26. So as I just showed on that in the chart previously, the total FY26 levy increase available is 2.96 million. That's that 2.5%. Sorry. That includes the 2.5% of 2.4 million over the previous year. What we're estimating right now for new growth, which is conservative estimate at $550,000. And then the 507, which was the excess levy, as we call it, which is available from prior year, which we can capture going into FY26. So then we move on to state aid at this time in the year, which is usual for us. I do an initial projection of level funded at the final number, which was given in FY25. That's pretty typical. We've seen sometimes it goes up a modest, maybe 2 or 3%, but at this time in the year, just to be conservative, we do project state aid as level funded. The governor's budget usually comes out at the end of January, and we'll update with any information when that cherry sheet information is released. Local receipts currently projected level funded at 4.6 million, about that. The estimate was increased, if you remember, in the FY25 budget by $400,000. So we did see sort of this trend of motor vehicle excise tax increasing, investment income increasing a bit. So we did go ahead and we felt comfortable last year after the board's recommendation to increase that budget by 400,000. So for this year right now, I do have that level funded over FY25. Free cash funds a good amount of our budget, especially our capital. It's currently certified, which I presented to the board back in, I believe it was September, at 14.3 million. So we are planning to continue our current allocations per our financial policies and fund that on capital one-time projects. We do have, I will give one insight, and I'll go over this more in December, but there is a potential to increase the amount for base capital, schools and municipal. We currently fund that at 2.3 million. It's been that for probably the last couple of years at least. That is our main base capital article that we have for schools and the main base capital article we have for municipal, which funds, annual ongoing capital investments, vehicles, building maintenance, things like that. So there is the potential for increasing that since our certification number is higher than it has been in previous years. Also, the plan is to utilize 125,000 for our stabilization fund as we do each year, and then the $405,000 for the FinCom reserve fund. And then it is available to utilize additional free cash for capital beyond those base articles I just mentioned and any miscellaneous articles. The Meals and Hotel Tax Fund, that's another revenue piece I want to mention. The current balance as of June 30th is $2 million. It's available for capital projects. And just a reminder, none of that was used at the most recent town meeting.
Stephanie, can I ask for a hold there
Yep,
on that meals and hotel tax?
yep.
Can you go back to slide number 4, please?
Oh, I still have an old number in there, don't I?
I'm sorry?
Is it that I have an old number in here?
While I'm looking at FY25 for the meals and hotel tax, why the drop?
So this it's not really a drop, it's just what we use to fund any additional capital articles at town meeting. We had $1.1 million that was approved at annual town meeting in 2023 for the FY24 budget. Although I'm realizing this is probably an old slide, we did not have anything funded through meals and hotel tax.
Joe, if you recall, that was the article that was defeated for the generators, and I think there was something else included in that along with the generators. So that was an article that was defeated, but it was one that actually came with its own funding source. It didn't really have an impact on anybody's tax bill.
Okay, so this is showing me funds?
No, so apologies, so this should be, I pulled this from the town meeting book, so I apologize, it hasn't been updated since then, but this was actually 0 for FY 25.
Okay,
And it just depends year over year what we decide to fund the different capital articles with. Whether it's free cash, meals and hotel tax,
right.
or other funding
I get that.
sources.
So what do we have available in the meals and hotel tax account now?
It's the balance as of June 30th of 2024 was $2 million.
Oh, okay. Okay. And what you're showing here is what we appropriated at town meeting to come out of that account to pay for capital items.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for calling that out. Appreciate it. So just moving on from the revenue into the expense side. We always take a first look at what do we need for fixed costs, because that really is a large piece of the budget. It's currently approximately 19% of our operating budget. And as Rob mentioned earlier with the assessments, a lot of these things are something that we have no control over. These are numbers that are set year to year, hence the name fixed costs. So it's sort of what we look at first on the expense side. And this is just an overview of what the budget was for FY 25 to give you sort of some insight into how large of a piece of the budget it is. And just a reminder, we currently spend about 17.9 million on our employee benefits costs, and then 4.2 million on our insurance and reserve accounts. And that's just the breakdown between the municipal and school. So that is the largest part of our fixed costs. When we look at our projections of what these costs might be in FY 26, we're right now projecting about a 1.6 or 7.5% increase in fixed costs over the current budget. I'm going to go through these little by little, but if you have any questions, please jump in. I will say that these are estimates right now going into the budget cycle. They're based on some pretty good data, but these could change between now and say late January. And I'll be coming back each time and updating you whenever we get additional information. But for right now, the pension assessment, we have been notified by the Norfolk County Retirement Board. They do a valuation every 2 years. They're required to do that. They had a new actuary doing that valuation this year. They changed a number of their assumptions to be much more conservative while doing their funded by date from 2030 to 2032. So with that, a lot of communities in Norfolk saw a large impact on what our pension assessment will be starting in FY 26. So just a heads up, the board did vote a couple of weeks ago to set those funding schedules. We have not received the official letter that we get from PARAC saying what our FY 26 assessment is. But confidently right now, I can say that's looking like it's going to be about a $600,000 or 9% increase over FY 25. Still needs to be finalized, just an estimate. But this is based on what the Norfolk County Retirement Board did vote a couple of weeks ago. Health insurance, this is just right now hearing what talks are starting to be about health insurance costs for FY 26. They're expected to go up pretty significantly. I am anticipating right now projecting an 8.5 increase over the current year's budget. The GIC usually updates this information starting at their February meeting and then finalizing their rates in March. So if I hear anything else about this over the next few months before then, I will definitely update the board, but for now, that's what I'm projecting out. Previous years' actual increases, as you can see the last couple of years, it's been 7%, then 5.7, and 8.3. So I feel confident right now going in an 8.5% increase just based on information I have, but that could change as well, which would be a $710,000 increase over the current year. Trash, this is coming as a preliminary estimate from our DPW department. It is based on their current contract with the vendor. That number is expected to increase about 9% or $170,000. That is also part of our fixed cost budget. And then just the other smaller pieces, not smaller pieces, but other pieces such as comprehensive insurance, payroll tax, and other things that I'm just projecting out currently right now. All of those assume about $120,000 increase at this time. Again, as we go through the budget, these will be more finalized. And then our annual OPEB appropriation, we currently have that at 1.59 million. And per financial policies and funding schedule, we assume we'll be increasing that $25,000 over the FY25 allocation. So that's also an increase in it's not in our fixed cost budget, but just as a FYI, because that is funded with taxation. So just to give you some reference, the FY25 budget final increase over 24 was 4%, which was about $850,000. I think a large piece of this is going to be the pension assessment. It only increased maybe 2 or 3% in FY25, so going up to the 9% increase in 26 is a pretty significant impact. So just some quick overall projection, just looking at initially where we are right now, based on all the information we have. Again, still has to be certified by DOR, but looking at what we do have for an increase in revenue, just per that formula we went over, the 2.5% increase, new growth, tax levy, that's about $2.9 million. And then projecting on the expenditure side with the fixed costs I just went over, if that's about 1.6 million and then a $25,000 allocation for OPEB, this brings us to, leaves a net available revenue to fund everything else in the operating budget at about 1.275 million right now. And just for reference, our operating budget, the largest piece of that is our municipal and school budget. So to break down just for municipal and school, what each 1%, 2%, 2.5%, 3% would be adding to the expense side. And I say this a lot, but we have to fund all these operating budgets within Prop 2.5, as Rob was alluding to earlier, just the restrictions that puts on. So I just wanted to give sort of a preview, look forward of what we're looking at right now.
So Stephanie, just to play Captain Obvious here, I think, but just to make them and keep me honest on the math. So if you're saying that 19% of our budget in the fixed cost arena is projecting to go up 7.5%, leaving you with 1.3 roughly on your current slide there. That means you've got somewhere just under 2% to allocate to the rest of the growth in the operating budgets.
That is what it's looking at right now. Usually around this time when I sort of do these projections, it's more like a 2 to 2.5% increase. It is looking a little bit more tight this year, like I said, just because of those initial.
That's when I talk about the fixed costs putting pressure on the rest of the pie to deliver services. This is the math bearing that out.
Yep. So just next steps in the budget cycle, big check tonight with the tax classification hearing. That was great. Thank you again. The next step will be get the tax rate approved by the DOR. And then from now until February at the select board meetings, I'll continue to update and review any FY26 revenue projections. If we hear something different about state aid, if our local receipts budget needs to be changed, things like that. And then the tax levy calculation for FY25, including the final new growth, which you got a preview at tonight, but then I will just, of course, circle back when everything has been completely finalized and have one more look at that. Continue to review capital budget articles that will start in December and continue into January. Review the FY26 municipal budget requests. As I said, we'll start those internally in December, and you'll see much more about that in January. State aid at the end of January, and then those 3 main budget documents, municipal, overall, and capital, which will be produced for the select board's proposed budget for February 1st. And then the big budget presentation to the Finance and Warrant Commission is scheduled right now for February 11th. That's what I have for tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question, Stephanie. Does the fixed costs on slide 9 include the revised Norfolk County retirement numbers?
Yes, that initial 9% estimate I have.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it's
so
660K.
So I'm currently estimating about a $600,000 increase over the current year's assessment.
Okay, so
Yes,
you
that's
included,
based
yep.
on, that's based on the Norfolk County Retirement Board's most recent meeting where they voted to approve a new appropriation schedule.
Not that I'm happy about it, but I'm happy you included it. Thank you.
No, it's a significant impact. We had a lot of pushback from a lot of the communities in Norfolk County, and it was just a lot of change on the assumption sides for their valuation all at once. But, yep, oh, sorry. I just need to move around for a minute, sorry, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Sir,
just want to add that Stephanie is being a little modest. There was a lot of work that Stephanie did drawing attention to some numbers that Norfolk County Retirement provided at one of their meetings much earlier, which had a much higher increase. She caught some she challenged some of the math. The executive director from Norfolk County Retirement did correct that. So I certainly want to thank Stephanie for catching that, addressing that. And then she and Molly worked with the other communities to communicate to Norfolk County on some suggestions, some ideas, and some concerns, which helped, I believe, Norfolk County. Instead of voting the entire schedule, they only voted to fund, or voted, excuse me, FY26. They're going to continue to look at that. And I think that really says a lot about what Stephanie and Molly did, working with those other communities to communicate some of the challenges that many communities will be facing with this, with all these changes happening in 1 year.
thank you, Chris. Nice work, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I think it bears reiterating how much the increases on the fixed cost side put pressure on the operating budget. And, you know, these are aspects that are outside of our control. Healthcare, pension assessment, and some of the other aspects that you've mentioned, and that we are working within 2.5. So it just shows how difficult it is to do this budgeting in light of these increases in fixed costs, which do not keep pace.
Good point, Mary Ann. Thank you. Rob, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, yeah, I guess the only other thing I'd add is that, you know, all of this highlights some of the challenges with Prop 2.5, right? Prop 2.5 works great in a low inflation, low interest rate environment. You know, as interest rates and inflation soars, everybody feels that pinch, as do all of the folks who are paid as part of the operating budget. And so when, you know, you want to be able to help your public servants, you know, your police, your fire, your teachers, you know, keep up with their rising costs in the supermarket and everywhere else, 2.5 in cutting it. So it's just, it's a double whammy the way it works with municipal budgets. So great during low interest rate and low inflationary times, but a sort of a compound problem in times like this.
Good point. Thanks, Rob. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Chris, anything else from your end? Okay.
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Tish, anything in the queue?
No questions.
We can release Stephanie to go home and get a good night's sleep.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Stephanie. Great job.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, next we're on to liaison reports. Mary Ann, do you have anything you'd like to
Yes.
update us on?
Yes, just briefly, the Canton Street Working Group will be meeting later this week on November 21st. That's Thursday at 7 p.m. at the Pine Hill School. Also want to report that the Commission on Disability recently met and discussed having a joint meeting with the Select Board to discuss the ADA self-evaluation. And I understand that is in process of being planned. So more to follow on that. That's my report.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Rob?
No, I have a very busy week though on liaison. I have the Long Range Financial Planning Committee meeting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. The PBC meets on Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then WEAC meets Thursday evening at 7 p.m. So plenty going on. I'll have more for you at our December 9th meeting.
We'll expect a
Thank you.
full report, Rob.
Thursday night. So there's 3 committee meetings on Thursday night? That's tough for the public. Okay. My reports are from the off-leash dog park work group. We're meeting, gonna shoot from the hip and say, surprisingly, on Thursday, November 21st, 6:30 at the library in the small conference room. That's the only update on that. And then I had the pleasure of attending the housing partnership meeting last Thursday, and Amanda Wolf did an excellent job. And if I could share my screen, let me see this for a second. I just have 4 slides I'd like to show. And Rob, I asked Amanda to send this to you. It might be helpful with your long range group.
Yeah, our agenda is set for tomorrow morning. I did see that come through, and I think Chris sent it to all of us so that we all have it. So
Great. You guys can see my screen okay?
we do not see it.
Okay, let's try this.
There you go.
How's that? Bummer. Okay. So, just quickly, Amanda did a great job on this. Small numbers on returns, Rob, but I was impressed to see that there's a 4.4% respondents saying ambulatory difficulty in their homes. The next thing that kind of caught my eye is 50.3% of the households will have someone over 60 plus years of age, which I thought was impressive. Putting those two together, I started thinking about other things. This is what caught my eye is, I believe it was the Metropolitan Area Planning Council back in 2020 forecast about 15,000 for a population in Westwood. It came out 16,000. And the UMass Donahue Institute is projecting for 2050 the population in Westwood to be 25,000. We all said, where are these people going to go? But it's still a pretty significant increase. The entire time all of us were looking at this saying, what are we going to do for housing? What are we going to do for affordable housing? And what jumped out at me is if we're going to have even if they're off by 50%, if we pick up another 5,000 residents, now more than ever, we need to build this fire station for the future. That's what I was thinking of during the whole time of this. So I just wanted to share that with you. And Rob, maybe it'll be helpful with your committee.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, folks.
Joe, you're still sharing your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to unshare.
Down the bottom of the Zoom bar there, you should see, or maybe at the top, you should see it end share somewhere.
Yep, thanks, Rob.
I think we have some minutes, Joe, which I'd be happy to move for approval if you're ready.
I am, if I can clear my screen. Okay, I did. Go ahead, Marianne, please.
I move that we approve the regular meeting minutes for our meeting of November 4, 2024 as written.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Marianne?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Well done, Tish. Is there any other business coming before the board this evening? Let's give that a minute. And while we're waiting, let me announce that our next meeting will be on December 9th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Tish, anything in the queue? Are we ready to move on?
No questions.
All right. The select board will be going into executive session to discuss one issue pursuant to our general laws, chapter 30A, section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to a potential litigation involving the property at 637 High Street, discussion of which would have detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were to be done in open session. The board will not be returning to open session. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that we adjourn into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
Second.
Roll call, Mary Ann,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight, and thank you, all of you here for helping me move this meeting along. Thank you. See you on the other side.
Have a
Good night, everyone.